We all like to believe that family is forever, that no matter what happens, blood ties will always bring people back together. But what happens when those bonds are broken beyond repair? When the person who is supposed to protect you, love you, and stand by your side walks away, only to return when they have nowhere else to go. Today on AGS Stories, we explore the harsh reality of betrayal, consequences, and the difficult choices that come when a father who once abandoned his son comes crawling back, desperate for a second chance. They say time heals all wounds. But does it? Or do some scars cut too deep to ever fully fade? Let's get into it. What would you do if the man who was supposed to love and protect you walked away without a second thought, only to come crawling back years later, broken and desperate? My father, James, was once my hero. I was just 11 when he left. At that age, you think your parents are invincible, that they'll always be there for you no matter what. But I learned the hard way that some people choose themselves over their own family. He met her, Samantha. She was younger, glamorous, the type of woman who could turn heads when she walked into a room. My dad thought she was his fresh start, his second chance at happiness. So, one night, without warning, he packed a suitcase, kissed me on the forehead, and walked out the door. "I'll always love you, bud," he said. "You'll understand when you're older." But I don't understand, and I never will, because while he was off playing house with his new love, my mom and I were left to pick up the pieces. She worked double shifts just to keep food on the table. I watched her cry herself to sleep more times than I can count. And my dad? He never called, never visited, not even a birthday card. It was like we never existed. Fast forward 15 years. I'm 26 now with my own life, my own struggles. I barely think about him anymore. But then, last week, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I picked up, and it was him. His voice was shaky. He sounded broken. "Ethan, I need your help." Turns out, Samantha drained his bank account, sold his house, and ran off with another man. My dad lost everything. And now he wants to come back, wants to reconnect, wants me to be the one to save him. But after all these years, after all the pain he put us through, does he really deserve it? What would you do? Would you forgive him? Or let him suffer the consequences of his choices? I need your advice on this one. Let's get into the full story. I always thought my dad was my hero. When I was little, he was the one who carried me on his shoulders at the park, who made pancakes on Sunday mornings, who cheered the loudest at my Little League games. But the man I knew started changing little by little until one day, he wasn't my dad anymore. It started with the late nights. At first, it was just extra hours at work. Or so he said. Then came the whispered phone calls, the sudden need to take business trips, the new cologne, one he never wore around my mom. She noticed first, of course. Moms always do. I remember the way she looked at him across the dinner table, suspicion in her eyes. "James, is there something you need to tell me?" she asked one night. He laughed, shaking his head. "You're being paranoid, Lisa." She wasn't. The night everything fell apart is burned into my memory. I woke up to yelling, my mother's voice, high-pitched and panicked. My father's cold and dismissive. I crept out of my room, my heart pounding. She was crying, begging him to tell the truth. And then I saw it, his suitcase. He was leaving. He turned to me, his face unreadable. "Ethan, you'll understand when you're older." And just like that, he was gone. He didn't look back. He didn't apologize. He just walked out that door, stepping into the night like we were nothing but a chapter he was ready to close. For a while, I convinced myself that he would come back, that he would realize his mistake, that he would miss me enough to at least call. But weeks passed, then months, then years. He moved in with her, Samantha. She was everything my mother wasn't. Younger, flashier, the kind of woman who made men feel important just by standing next to them. They lived a dream life. Or at least, that's what it looked like. While my mom and I struggled to pay bills, he and Samantha traveled the world. Their Instagram was filled with pictures of five-star hotels, private beaches, and expensive gifts. Meanwhile, my mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Not once did he send money. Not once did he check in. It was like I had been erased. I was angry. But more than that, I was hurt. Fast forward 15 years. I'm 26 now. I have a job, an apartment, a life that I built on my own. I hadn't thought about my father in years. Then my phone rang, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, maybe old curiosity, made me pick up. Ethan, I knew the voice instantly. It was weaker than I remembered, rougher, like life had taken its toll on him. Dad. My throat tightened, the word foreign in my mouth. He exhaled, a shaky, broken sound. I need your help. He sounded desperate, not the confident, charming man who had once turned his back on us. What do you want? I asked, my voice colder than I expected. He hesitated. Samantha, she's gone. I didn't say anything. She took everything, Ethan. He continued, his voice cracking. My money, my house, she cleaned out my accounts and left me with nothing. I waited, my pulse thudding in my ears. I have nowhere else to go, he said finally. I was hoping we could talk. Maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I get back on my feet. I almost laughed. After all these years. Now you wanted to talk? Where was this regret when Mom was working double shifts? I shot back. He sighed heavily. I made a mistake, Ethan. A big one. I know that now. He paused. I don't have anyone else. I clenched my jaw, because part of me wanted to say, that's not my problem. But another part of me, the part that still remembered Sunday morning pancakes and shoulder rides, hesitated. I pictured him alone, homeless, lost. The man who had once seemed larger than life, now begging for scraps of mercy. Did he really deserve my help? Or was this just karma doing what karma does best? So now I need to ask you, would you let him back in? Or would you let him suffer the consequences of his choices? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I need to hear what you would do. Wow, you guys really had strong opinions on this one. I knew my story would get people talking, but I wasn't expecting the flood of responses, the debates, the personal stories you all shared. And honestly, I feel torn. Some of you think I should shut the door on my father for good. Others believe in second chances, that maybe, just maybe, people can change. Let's check out some of your top comments. Speech Balloon at Real Talk Rachel. Actions have consequences. He made his bed. Now he has to lie in it. He left you and your mom without a second thought. Now he's only coming back because he has no one else. That's not regret. That's desperation. Speech Balloon at Second Chance Sam. I get why you're angry, but forgiveness isn't about letting him off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the past. You don't have to let him live with you, but maybe hear him out. See if he's truly sorry. Speech Balloon at No More Toxic Ties. If he truly regrets it, he needs to prove it first. Don't let him manipulate you. If he's only sorry because he lost everything, that's not real remorse. Make him earn a place in your life before you even consider helping him. I read these comments over and over again, trying to figure out where I stand. Because here's the truth. Deep down, part of me still wants a father. But the other part of me? The part that remembers my mom struggling to pay rent. The part that spent birthdays staring at an empty mailbox, waiting for a card that never came. That part doesn't want to give him anything. Some of you say I should let karma do its thing. That walking away is the only way he'll truly understand what he put us through. And honestly, maybe you're right. But should I regret not helping my own father? Or is this the lesson he needed to learn? I don't know yet. I just know I need to decide soon. After reading your comments, I decided to meet him. I wasn't sure what to expect. Would he be the same man who walked out on us all those years ago? Would he try to guilt trip me, spin some sob story about how life had been unfair to him? Or would he finally take accountability for what he did? I needed answers. So, I agreed to meet him at a small diner on the outskirts of town. A place that felt neutral. Somewhere that didn't hold memories of the past. Somewhere that didn't feel like home. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. He was slouched over a cup of coffee, stirring it absently. He looked older, more fragile than I remembered. The man who used to stand tall and proud, who once had the confidence to abandon his own family for another life, now sat hunched over, as if the weight of his mistakes had finally caught up to him. I took a deep breath and walked over. Ethan, he said, standing up slowly. I didn't hug him. I didn't shake his hand. I just nodded and sat down. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. He looked at me like he was searching for something familiar, something that reminded him of the little boy he left behind. But I wasn't that boy anymore. He cleared his throat. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded, waiting. I don't know where to start, he admitted. His voice was rough, tired. I know I don't deserve to ask anything of you, but I didn't know where else to go. And there it was, the first crack in his story. Not I'm sorry for what I did. Not I regret leaving you and your mom. Just I have nowhere else to go. I clenched my jaw, feeling the anger bubble up inside me. Why now? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Why? After all these years, do you suddenly care? He sighed, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to warm them up. Because I lost everything. There was no hesitation in his answer. No deeper reflection. No real remorse. Just loss. I leaned back, crossing my arms. So if Samantha hadn't taken your money, your house, if she hadn't left you the way you left us, would you even be here right now? He didn't answer right away, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. Finally, he exhaled. I was a fool, he admitted. I thought she loved me. I thought she was my fresh start, but she was just using me. His eyes met mine, pleading. I see that now, and I know I messed up. I know I hurt you and your mother in ways I can never take back. I swallowed hard. Do you? He nodded quickly. Yes, and if I could go back, I'd do things differently. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the man sitting across from me, broken and desperate, had truly changed. But something in my gut told me otherwise. I leaned forward. If Samantha had stayed, if you still had your house, your money, if your life was still perfect, would you have ever thought about me? His face twisted in pain, but I needed the truth. Would you have ever called? Tears welled in his eyes, but I refused to let that move me. I had cried enough for him in my lifetime. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know. That was it. That was the real answer. Not yes, of course. Not I've always regretted leaving you. Just I don't know. I sat back, shaking my head. You're not sorry for leaving. You're sorry that you lost. You're sorry that she did to you what you did to us. He dropped his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking. I deserve that, he muttered. I deserve worse. For a moment, I just stared at him. This broken man in front of me. This was not my father. Not the man I had idolized as a kid. That man was gone. Maybe he had never really existed. I sighed, rubbing my temples. So, what do you want from me? He looked up, his eyes red and tired. A second chance? I laughed bitterly. A second chance? He nodded, desperate. I just need somewhere to stay. Just until I can get back on my feet. I'll work. I won't be a burden. He reached out, almost like he wanted to take my hand, but stopped himself. I just need family right now, Ethan. That word family cut through me like a knife. Family. The same thing he threw away like it meant nothing. And now he wanted it back, just because he had nowhere else to go. I inhaled deeply, my hands clenching into fists under the table. I had a choice to make. Did I help him out of pity? Give him shelter, even if it meant inviting the past back into my life? Or did I walk away and let him deal with the consequences of his own choices? The way he forced my mother and me to all those years ago? I don't know what the right answer is. So now, I need to ask you, what would you do? After my last update, you guys had even more to say. I knew this would be a divisive topic, but the sheer number of comments, the raw emotions in your words, it made me realize I'm not alone in this. So many of you have dealt with betrayal, abandonment, and the question of whether someone truly deserves a second chance. I've been thinking about this nonstop. Part of me feels like I should be the bigger person, do what's right, and help him, because at the end of the day, he's still my father. But then I remember the nights my mom cried herself to sleep, the birthdays spent staring at the door, hoping he would show up. And now, when he has no one left, I'm supposed to be his salvation? It doesn't sit right with me. Let's check out some of the most liked comments from you guys. Speech Balloon at TruthSeeker90. If he was truly sorry, he wouldn't have waited until he was homeless to come back. Real regret isn't about losing everything. It's about realizing you were wrong, even when things are still going well. He's not sorry he hurt you. He's sorry his backup plan failed. Speech Balloon at Be Kind But Wise. I get it, man. It's tough. You don't want to turn your back on him completely, but you also don't want to be taken for a fool. If you decide to help him, do it on your terms. Help him get a job. not a place to stay. If he's really changed, he'll prove it. Some of you suggested a test. See if he really means his apology before offering any real help. And honestly, that might just be what I do. Because forgiveness is one thing, but trust, that has to be earned. I met with him one last time. After reading through all your comments, after wrestling with my own thoughts, I decided that if I was going to make peace with this situation, I needed closure. I needed to see, once and for all, if my father had really changed, or if he was just looking for a way out of his own mistakes. We met at the same diner. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in the same spot, stirring a cup of coffee like before. But this time, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anxious. I had made up my mind. I sat down across from him, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. I've thought about everything, Dad. The words still felt strange in my mouth. And I've made a decision. He straightened up, his eyes filled with cautious hope. I'm not giving you money, I told him. I'm not letting you stay with me. But I am willing to help you get back on your feet. His expression shifted slightly, but he kept listening. I found a job opening at a local construction company. I continued. It's not glamorous, but it's work. They're hiring laborers and they don't require experience. If you really want to turn your life around, this is your shot. He blinked, his hands tightening around his coffee mug. Manual labor? I nodded. Yeah, hard work. But it's honest. You'd be earning your way back instead of expecting someone to hand it to you. Silence. I could feel the tension in the air as he processed what I had just said. Then he scoffed, shook his head. That's not really what I was hoping for, Ethan, he admitted, his voice laced with disappointment. I was thinking maybe I could stay with you for a little while, at least until I figure things out. Maybe you could help me get back into something better. I sighed, already expecting this response. What exactly do you think something better is, Dad? I asked, because from where I'm sitting, you don't have a lot of options. His jaw clenched. I didn't expect this. I thought you'd understand. I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. Understand? Dad, I spent years trying to understand why you left. I spent years wondering if I wasn't enough, if maybe I had done something to make you walk away. And now you want me to understand you? His face twisted, but he didn't argue. I don't think you regret what you did, I continued. I think you regret that it didn't work out the way you planned. You regret that Samantha used you the same way you used us. But you don't actually regret leaving us behind. I do, he insisted, his voice breaking slightly. I do regret it, Ethan. Then prove it, I said simply. Take the job. Show me that you actually want to change instead of just wanting an easy way out. His eyes darted away. And in that moment, I knew. He didn't want change. He wanted comfort. He wanted an easy solution. He wanted to be saved. But he didn't want to do the work to save himself. I stood up, sliding a small piece of paper across the table with the job information written on it. That's the offer, I said. You can take it or leave it. But I'm done trying to fix something that you don't even want to fix yourself. He didn't reach for the paper. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, staring at the table, his pride too big to let him accept reality. I gave him one last look, and then I turned around and walked out of that diner. And you know what? I have no regrets, because I finally understand something. Some people don't change, not because they can't, but because they don't want to. And no matter how much you want to believe in them, no matter how much you hope they'll see the light, you can't force someone to be better. They have to want it for themselves. I walked away that day knowing I had done everything I could. I gave him a choice, a real one, and he chose to stay the same. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. This isn't just about betrayal. It's about accountability. For a long time, I thought forgiveness meant giving someone another chance, that letting go of the past meant letting them back in. But I've learned something through all of this. Sometimes people don't regret their actions. They regret losing. My father didn't come back because he realized what he did was wrong. He came back because his life fell apart, and suddenly I was his only option. That's not remorse. That's desperation. And here's the hard truth. I wanted to believe he had changed. Some part of me, no matter how small, wished for a different ending. But the reality is, people don't change just because they hit rock bottom. They change when they choose to. And my father? He wasn't willing to do that. I gave him a chance to prove himself. A real chance. But he refused because what he really wanted wasn't redemption. It was rescue. And that's not my responsibility. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean allowing someone to walk back into your life just because they finally decided to show up. Forgiveness means letting go of the anger so you can move forward. But trust? That has to be earned. So, did I make the right choice? Would you have done the same? I know some of you might think I was too harsh. That maybe, just maybe, I should have given him more. And others might say I should have walked away even sooner. But that's why I need to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Let's talk about it. Let's debate it. Let's figure out what it really means to forgive someone who doesn't deserve it. And if you love stories like this, real-life betrayals, shocking twists, and deep life lessons, don't forget to hit like, comment, and subscribe for more. Because trust me, there's always another story to tell. See you in the next one.